I didn't think asking for $100 would cost me my dignity. It was supposed to be simple. A text. A lifeline. Just enough to cover groceries and gas until my paycheck landed. I wasn't behind on rent. I wasn't drowning in debt. I was just tight. One of those in-between weeks where everything hits at once. The car battery dies, the fridge gives up, and the client delays their payment just one more day. And I thought, naively, that I could ask my sister. Her name is Brielle. Brielle with the diamond-studded phone case, the house with the backyard pizza oven, the SUV that costs more than my entire student loan debt. Brielle, who once cried because her custom kitchen backsplash wasn't Instagrammable enough. I should have known better. I sent the text at 8:03 a.m. Hey Brielle, random, I know, would you be able to spot me $100 until Friday? Totally understand if not. I didn't expect fanfare. I didn't expect a yes, honestly. But I didn't expect what came next either. She didn't reply by text. She waited until brunch. My family does this monthly brunch thing. My mom insists on it like it's a sacred rite. Mimosas, overcooked frittata, and emotional landmines in every conversation. I showed up that Sunday in jeans and the one blouse that hadn't given up on its buttons, hoping to make it through the hour unnoticed. I sat down at the table next to my cousin Riley, sipping orange juice because champagne wasn't in the budget. My phone buzzed. It was Brielle. No worries, I'll talk to you about it at brunch. That smiley face should have been the red flag. Midway through the meal, as Mom started talking about a neighbor's third engagement, Brielle cleared her throat. I just want to say, she began, raising her glass like she was about to toast, how proud I am that some of us are independent. She looked at me, too long, too amused. You know, able to pay for their own brunch. I blinked. Someone laughed. Not everyone caught it, but enough did. My uncle chuckled behind his coffee. Riley stared at her eggs. My mom gave that tight smile she wears when she's pretending not to pick sides. Brielle leaned in and added, just saying, some people rely too much on family bailouts. It's a slippery slope, right? I wanted to melt into the table. No one knew I'd asked her for anything. But now they did. She outed me for $100 request like I was some kind of scammer. I tried to smile, tried to act unbothered. I even nodded, as if agreeing. But something broke in me that day. Not like a snapped twig, but like a fault line. After brunch, I walked back to my beat-up Civic parked 2 blocks away. I couldn't afford downtown parking. The door creaked when I opened it, the seatbelt frayed under my fingers. I didn't cry. I just sat there, frozen, playing that moment in my head. Her smile, the judgment in her voice, the smirks around the table. It wasn't about the money, it was the humiliation, the unspoken rule she broke. Family can mock you in private, but never in front of witnesses. Not like that. And worse? I had no defense. I was broke. She wasn't wrong. I was the charity case. But what Brielle didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had something she couldn't buy. I had an idea. It wasn't much, just a sketch on a napkin, some wireframes saved on my laptop, a late-night obsession with solving a stupidly specific problem, helping small creators invoice and track digital tips across platforms. Venmo, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee. No one had streamlined them. I had a prototype. I had research. I just didn't have funding, time, or validation. But that day in the car, cheeks burning, ego bleeding, I whispered to myself, we're gonna build this. I didn't mean we. Like I had a team. I meant the part of me that still believed I was worth betting on. The girl who taught herself HTML at 12, who fixed her college roommate's website for $20 in a bag of pretzels. The girl Brielle forgot about. I opened the Notes app. I wrote, $100 today equals $3 million someday. Watch me. Over the next few weeks, I changed. Not on the outside. I still wore the same sneakers with the peeling sole, still counted change at the grocery store. But I stopped waiting for approval. I stopped asking for anything. I woke up earlier. I slept less. I coded on lunch breaks, sketched UX flows on the back of receipts, recorded demo videos on my cracked phone. I found forums of other indie devs. I DM'd strangers. I downloaded every free startup podcast I could find. And when I finally got paid by that late client, I didn't buy groceries. I bought a domain name. Some nights were quiet. Some nights I hated everything I built. There were moments I almost deleted the whole thing, but then I'd remember her voice. You should be able to pay for your own brunch. Every time I felt tired, broke, or useless, I remembered her laughing. And I kept going. Not out of spite, but because I realized something powerful. If I could survive being humiliated by the one person I trusted most, then there was nothing I couldn't face. Years later, people ask me where the turning point was. It wasn't when I hit my first million, it wasn't when I trended on Product Hunt, it wasn't when Forbes emailed, it was the brunch, the $100 moment. That was when I stopped needing anyone's permission to succeed. That was when I started earning my ma'am. People love the highlight reel. They love the glow-up, the check, the car, the clean, polished version of the story where the underdog magically rises and everyone claps at the end. What they don't want is the middle, the awkward, raw, unglamorous middle where you sit in silence, wondering if you're stupid for believing in something no one else can see. That middle was where I lived most of my life. Growing up, Brielle was the star, the straight-A homecoming queen, early acceptance to Yale kind of star. She glowed in family albums. Mom would show off her recital videos to neighbors like they were Oscar reels. Dad used to joke she came out of the womb with a resume. I was around. Not dramatic enough to be the problem child. Not dazzling enough to be the favorite. I was the quiet one. The she's got potential girl they said nice things about but never invested in. I built Lego cities while Brielle built social empires. I wrote HTML in the margins of my notebooks while she color-coded her college applications. She was brilliance in motion. I was curiosity in the shadows. But here's the thing about living in the background. You start paying attention. You learn to listen when people think you're invisible. You hear what they say behind closed doors. About you, about each other. You get used to being underestimated, and you start to realize there's power in it. People don't guard themselves around the one they dismiss. And that's how I started learning. When I was 14, I built my first website on a borrowed Chromebook. It was awful. Neon buttons, Comic Sans headers, scroll bars that jittered like nervous legs. But it worked. It was for a neighborhood babysitter who paid me in hot chocolate and a used copy of The Lean Startup. I read that book like it was a survival guide. I didn't tell anyone, not even Brielle, especially not Brielle. She would have laughed. Or worse, she would have pretended to care with that condescending smile she saves for people who try hard. Instead, I kept building. Quietly, on my own. Every part-time job I took in college, waitressing, tutoring, folding sweaters at retail, I saved 10% of every check and funneled it into books, online courses, and eventually server space. I became obsessed with systems, friction, automation, tiny invisible processes that made everything smoother. I'd lie awake at night thinking, there has to be a better way to do X, and sometimes I'd wake up with the answer. But it always stayed in the background, because no one asked what I was passionate about. Not once. There was one person, though. Professor Tilden. He taught Intro to Web Architecture my sophomore year. Most students hated him. He was strict, dry, didn't allow laptops in class unless you coded by hand. But on the last day of the semester, after class emptied out, he stopped me at the door. "You build like someone who solves before she speaks," he said. I blinked. Thanks? Keep going," he added. "But stay invisible for now, you're more dangerous that way." That sentence haunted me, in the best way. It was the first time someone saw through the silence and recognized it not as weakness, but as strategy. Brielle, of course, didn't notice any of this. While I graduated and quietly landed a back-end dev role at a fintech startup, she was already on her second condo and planning a destination wedding with her investment banker boyfriend. She never asked what I did. At family dinners, she introduced me as my little sister who's super into, websites or something. I let it slide because I was still building, and one night, when I had just turned 27 and was eating leftovers in a studio apartment above a laundromat, I realized the tool I had started sketching for creators might actually be something. It started from watching a friend cry over her unpaid podcast donations. She had fans, but no way to track her income, and her tax season was a nightmare. I remember thinking, why is this still so hard? I wrote down the idea, a clean interface that aggregates small online earnings from all platforms. Transparent, smart, built for freelancers, not accountants. I called it TallyTip. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Here's what they never saw. Me skipping dinner to afford domain renewals. I used to think that the hardest part of building something from scratch was the lack of resources. It's not. The hardest part is the silence. When you've poured your soul into something, line by line, hour by hour, and no one claps, no one asks how it's going, no one even knows it exists. It's not hatred you're fighting, it's indifference. And that kind of loneliness, it doesn't shout. It just hangs there like fog every time you open your laptop and wonder if you're doing this for nothing. I moved into a tiny sublet 2 towns over after my landlord raised the rent again. It had a broken lock, a single window, and smelled like someone's failed sourdough experiment. But it had Wi-Fi, and a fold-out desk, and a corner where I could tape whiteboard paper to the wall. I called it HQ. HQ had rules. No complaining before 9 a.m., 3 cups of coffee max, no doom scrolling during crash loops, and the most important, build something real every single day. Not fancy, not polished, just real. Because I'd learned something after the first failed mini-launch of TallyTip. People don't want perfection. They want proof that something works, that you care, that you're willing to show up before it's perfect. My first 100 users came from Twitter. I posted daily updates, raw, honest, no filters. Added a new Stripe feature, accidentally broke the entire dashboard, fixing it now. Day 42 of building this app no one asked for, but I still believe in it. Some days I got 3 likes, some days I got none, but a handful of people started replying, then DMing. One woman in Minnesota said she'd been trying to manage her ebook tips manually for 2 years. Another guy from Argentina offered to translate my landing page. That was the moment I realized I wasn't totally alone. There were others like me, struggling, building, failing quietly, hoping loudly, but for every small victory there was a setback waiting behind it. I remember one weekend, after pulling an all-nighter debugging some payment integration, I visited home. Brielle was there. She'd just come back from Tulum and was showing off pictures of some art installations she accidentally got into because of her influencer friend. We sat across from each other in the living room, just us for once. She sipped her kombucha and said, "So, are you still doing that tech hobby thing?" "Tech hobby thing," I smiled. "Yeah," I said, "still at it." I used to think that the hardest part of building something from scratch was the lack of resources. It's not. The hardest part is the silence. When you've poured your soul into something line by line, hour by hour, and no one claps, no one asks how it's going, no one even knows it exists, it's not hatred you're fighting, it's indifference. And that kind of loneliness? It doesn't shout, it just hangs there, like fog, every time you open your laptop and wonder if you're doing this for nothing. I moved into a tiny sublet, 2 towns over, after my landlord raised the rent again. It had a broken lock, a single window, and smelled like someone's failed sourdough experiment. But it had Wi-Fi and a fold-out desk, and a corner where I could tape whiteboard paper to the wall. I called it HQ. HQ had rules. No complaining before 9 a.m., 3 cups of coffee max, no doom scrolling during crash loops. And the most important, build something real, every single day. Not fancy, not polished, just real. Because I'd learned something after the first failed mini-launch of TallyTip. People don't want perfection. They want proof that something works, that you care, that you're willing to show up before it's perfect. My first 100 users came from Twitter. I posted daily updates, raw, honest, no filters. Added a new Stripe feature. Accidentally broke the entire dashboard, fixing it now. Day 42 of building this app no one asked for, but I still believe in it. Some days I got 3 likes, some days I got none, but a handful of people started replying, then DMing. One woman in Minnesota said she'd been trying to manage her ebook tips manually for 2 years. Another guy from Argentina offered to translate my landing page for free. That was the moment I realized I wasn't totally alone. There were others like me, struggling, building, failing quietly, hoping loudly. But for every small victory, there was a setback waiting behind it. I remember one weekend, after pulling an all-nighter debugging some payment integration, I visited home. Brielle was there. She'd just come back from Tulum and was showing off pictures of some art installation she accidentally got into because of her influencer friend. We sat across from each other in the living room, just us for once. She sipped her kombucha and said, "So, are you still doing that tech hobby thing?" "Tech hobby thing," I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "Still at it." She nodded absently. "Well, it's cute you're passionate about something. Not everything has to be about money." That part almost made me laugh, because I hadn't told her that my hobby had just crossed $11K in monthly recurring revenue, or that I'd been invited to speak at a virtual summit for indie developers, or that I had quietly hired my first freelancer, an engineer in Bangalore who was twice as fast as I was and half as cocky. But I didn't say any of that, because I didn't need to yet. Still, it gets lonely. You start to crave validation, not applause, just a voice that says, keep going. And one night, when I was knee-deep in debugging a glitch that made half the tip data disappear, I cracked. I shut my laptop, curled up on the floor of HQ, and asked myself the question I had tried not to speak aloud for months: is this even worth it? And that's when I got the email. Her name was Marla. She was a 62-year-old artist in Vermont who ran watercolor classes through Zoom. She'd just discovered TallyTip through a writer's newsletter and said it changed her life. I used to spend hours trying to reconcile my Ko-Fi donations and my PayPal account, she wrote. Your app helped me understand I'd been underreporting income for over a year. Thank you. She ended it with, I know you don't know me, but I just want to say, you're doing something beautiful. Please don't stop. I read that email 6 times. I printed it, taped it to the wall above my desk, and I whispered, okay, Marla, I won't. A few weeks later, I met Lena. She was another developer, but the kind of developer who spoke in metaphors and built with grace. I found her on a forum where I'd asked a stupid question about API throttling. Instead of mocking me, she DM'd me with a screen-recorded walkthrough. One thing led to another, and soon we were video calling weekly, sharing our growth metrics, our horror stories, our wins. She was the first person I let see the real dashboard numbers. She looked at the chart and said, you're building something sticky, and sticky scales. I laughed. Sticky's all I can afford right now. But she was right. My retention rate was freakishly high. Users weren't just signing up, they were staying, using it, telling others. And suddenly I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was iterating, improving, building with people, not just for them, brick by brick alone but no longer lonely. Around that time I got another text from Brielle. Hey, can you help me figure out what crypto wallet to use? Nick said you're good at that stuff. I stared at the message for a long time. It was casual, breezy, as if we'd never had brunch, as if she hadn't laughed at my request, as if she hadn't spent years narrating my life like a quirky side plot. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because something in me had changed. I didn't want her attention. I didn't need her to say sorry. I just wanted to keep building, because somewhere along the line, revenge had stopped being the engine, and creation became the fuel. By the end of that quarter, TallyTip crossed 7,000 users. Our MRR hit $31,000. Stripe sent us a shiny little badge. An investor emailed asking if I'd consider a seed round. I said maybe. But I didn't smile because of the money. I smiled because I knew I'd built it. Not with venture capital. Not with family money, not even with approval, but with silence, persistence, and the smallest voice inside me that never stopped whispering, you were never the side plot. People assume that when the money hits, everything changes. The truth? The first time I saw 6 zeros in my Stripe account, I was sitting cross-legged on the floor eating cold spaghetti with a plastic fork and wearing a hoodie I'd slept in for 3 days. There were no champagne flutes, no rooftop parties. Just me, a spreadsheet, and the dawning realization, I did this. And no one in my family had a clue. It started with a tweet. A small creator with a big following posted, just used @TallyTip to track my side income. Where has this been all my life? That tweet exploded. Within hours it had 10,000 likes, 3,000 retweets, and more importantly, traffic. I watched my analytics dashboard go from a sleepy trickle to a tsunami. Sign-ups surged. My phone buzzed so much it overheated and died. I couldn't breathe. I thought the server would crash. I thought I would crash, but it didn't. And neither did I. I pulled 2 all-nighters. I was answering support tickets at 3 a.m., while Lena frantically helped me patch bugs and scale infrastructure on the fly. We added a waitlist after user 12,000. My inbox turned into a battleground. Some people complained, yes, but others sent messages like, this just saved my freelance taxes. I can't believe someone finally built this for us. You've changed how I see my income. Thank you. I couldn't keep up with the thank you notes. That sentence alone still feels surreal. I remember sitting in the shower the next morning, fully clothed, because it was the only quiet place left. Water pelting down on my hoodie, tears mixing with steam, the smell of burned-out adrenaline in the air. 7 figures. I whispered it to myself. Not out loud, not for anyone else, just to test if it sounded real. I made $1 million. Then I laughed, because in that moment, I realized something no one ever told me about success. It doesn't feel like standing on a mountaintop. It feels like finally dropping the weight you didn't know you were carrying. After that week, everything moved fast. I got emails from investors, interviews with online publications, even a short segment on a YouTube channel I used to binge for inspiration. I hired Lena full-time. Then, added 2 more developers. A marketing lead. A customer support wizard named Nate, who responded to every angry email with, "Hey, I'm on your side too." We weren't just a product anymore, we were a team. I built a new dashboard. Internal this time, called it Proof of Growth. I stared at the chart one night and saw it rise slow and steady, like a staircase I'd carved with bare hands. Then I checked my bank balance, $3,723,491. That number didn't make me cry. But what did? The memory of my sister's voice saying, "Some people just can't manage money." I kept it secret. All of it. I didn't post anything flashy. I didn't show off online. I didn't text Brielle, didn't send her receipts, didn't drop passive-aggressive comments at brunch, because by now, I understood the real flex wasn't the money. It was the silence, the discipline, the freedom to choose what I shared. But the universe has a sense of humor. Because just as I was preparing for a quiet victory, I got an invitation, a party, at Brielle's house, our niece's 8th birthday, all family, all friends, all of them in one place. I nearly deleted the email, but then I saw the subject line again. Family gathering, casual, outdoor. And something inside me clicked. Not out of spite, out of curiosity. I wanted to see how it felt, to walk in as someone they never imagined I'd become. I didn't buy a new outfit, I didn't hire a stylist, I just showed up. Simple black dress, clean makeup, calm smile, the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need volume to be noticed. I pulled up in a Tesla I didn't post about, parked next to Brielle's Range Rover, stepped out and waved at my cousin's kids. Inside, everything was the same. The chatter, the Pinterest-themed decorations, the overfrosted cake. Brielle flitted around like a hostess in a real estate ad. She spotted me, blinked. "Oh," she said, "you came." "I did." I smiled. She hugged me a beat too long. "You look different." "Life's been good," I replied, sipping from a glass someone handed me. The conversation swirled. Real estate, schools, who was remodeling what? At some point, someone asked what I'd been up to. I paused, then said, "I built a little app, it's going well." Brielle turned. "Oh yeah, your money tracker thing?" I nodded. "Is it, like, profitable?" I smiled. "It's doing all right." "How all right?" someone asked, half laughing. I took a sip. "We crossed $3.7 million in revenue last quarter." Silence. A fork dropped. Someone choked on their seltzer. Brielle's mouth parted like she was about to say something, but forgot how words worked. I didn't gloat, didn't wink, didn't rub it in. I just stood there, the invisible sister, now unmistakably seen. And in that stillness, I felt something profound. I didn't want revenge anymore. I just wanted to enjoy the moment. Not because it proved them wrong, but because it finally proved me right. The next time I saw my sister alone, the world was quieter. It was late afternoon, the party had thinned and kids were melting down from too much sugar. Parents were chasing half-eaten cupcakes, and the backyard was littered with paper plates and glitter. I stepped out onto the patio with a glass of something sparkling and watched the sun burn low over the trees. That golden hour silence? It felt earned. Then I heard her heels. Click, click, pause, Brielle. She came out slow, like she was approaching a wild animal that might spook. "Hey," she said. I turned. She had a drink in her hand and that look she always wore before a difficult conversation. A mix of faux casual charm and underlying calculation. "Hey," I echoed. She leaned against the railing like she hadn't just spent 10 years pretending I was a minor character in her highlight reel. "So, 3.7 million, huh?" I laughed lightly. "Something like that." "Revenue or valuation?" I glanced sideways. "Cash in. Pre-tax," she whistled. "Wow, didn't realize it got that big." "Most people didn't." There was a pause. She looked away toward the neighbor's yard. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I owe you an apology." I didn't respond right away. Not because I was angry, not because I didn't believe her. I just wanted to see what her version of an apology looked like. She inhaled, then pushed her words out like they'd been practicing in the mirror. I shouldn't have made that joke at brunch about the $100. It was cruel. And I don't even know why I did it. I think I just always assumed you'd be fine, you know? I raised an eyebrow. Fine? Yeah, you were always quiet, but you figured stuff out. You didn't need as much attention. I guess I thought that meant you didn't need support either. That landed, because that was exactly how I felt growing up, like they saw my silence as self-sufficiency, like being low maintenance meant being invisible. I did need support, I said softly. She looked down at her glass. I know, she replied. And I'm sorry I wasn't that person for you. I should have been. I wanted to believe her, maybe I did, but the part of me that used to beg for crumbs of approval still flinched. I asked for $100, I said, not a kidney. Just enough to get through a week. And instead of saying no, you made sure everyone knew I was small. Her face crumpled, just a little. I was wrong, she said, truly. There it was, no excuses, no justifications, just, I was wrong. We stood in silence. Birds chirped like background music in a rom-com scene that couldn't quite decide whether to heal or break apart. Then she turned to me. I've been thinking of starting something, she said. A business. Small, nothing like what you've done, but I have ideas. I blinked. Really? She nodded. Event styling, online courses for hosting. I already have a bit of a following and I think I could monetize it. I waited, and then came the sentence that would live in my brain forever. She said, would you mind looking over my pitch deck? And then after a beat, if you have time, ma'am. I blinked. Ma'am? I repeated, smiling. She blushed. I mean, respect, not age, God, not age. I laughed so hard I had to put my drink down. She laughed too, maybe a little nervously. And for a moment, the years of distance cracked open into something that looked like sisterhood. Not the filtered kind, the real complicated, messy, repairing kind. I'll look at your deck, I said finally. Send it to me. She nodded, grateful, and then added, I promise I won't Venmo request you for the consultation. I rolled my eyes. If you do, I'll deduct it from your first million. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But as she turned to go back inside, she said something I hadn't heard since we were kids. I'm proud of you. She didn't say it loudly, no audience, no performance, just 6 quiet words floating in the fading light. Later that night, I sat in my car with the windows cracked and the engine off. The Tesla hummed softly, like it was exhaling with me. I didn't feel like I'd won, not in a look who's laughing now way. I felt released. Like I'd spent years gripping the steering wheel of a car that was finally allowed to stop. I checked my phone. A new email from Brielle. Subject, rough draft of the event thingy, plus be kind. I smiled. Maybe the past wouldn't be rewritten, but the future? It could be co-authored. I never imagined power would sound so soft, not loud, not commanding, not something that slams fists or demands silence. Just a single word, said lightly, half joking, but heavy with the weight of acknowledgement. Ma'am. It happened 3 weeks after the birthday party. Brielle had followed up. She sent her pitch deck. It was a mess, cluttered fonts, no business model, a logo pulled from Canva and cropped unevenly, but it had heart. Passion. A woman who for the first time was trying to build something that wasn't inherited or handed to her. I spent 2 hours reworking the structure, cleaned up her brand voice, added suggestions for market testing and audience targeting. I sent it back with a note that said, start small, start fast, don't wait to be ready, just start. She replied with one word, wow. No glitter, no fireworks, just mutual respect, slowly stitched together. I didn't expect to hear from her again so soon. But then came a knock on my apartment door. She stood there in a white blouse, jeans, and an expression I'd never seen before. Nervousness. Got a minute? She asked. I moved aside, letting her in. She sat at my kitchen island, glanced around the minimalist space, the soft wood, the open shelves, the clean silence of a place built with patience, not pretense. She held a manila folder. Inside, documents, partnership papers. I've been thinking, she said. You know people, you know how to build. I know my audience and I know events. I want to offer you equity. We build this together. I looked at her, stunned. She wasn't offering me a favor. She was offering me respect. I appreciate that, I said carefully, But I don't partner where I have to parent. Her eyes widened, then she laughed. Damn, okay, fair. I'll mentor, I added. I'll support, but you build this. On your name. On your grit, not mine. She swallowed, nodded, okay, then stood, held out her hand. Thank you, ma'am. That's when it happened. The pause, the slow smile creeping across both our faces, that strange, wonderful moment when the titles flip. Not in cruelty, not in revenge, but in evolution. I wasn't her little sister anymore. I wasn't the cute coder with pipe dreams. I was the woman she looked to for guidance. After she left, I sat in silence. Let the word replay in my head. Ma'am, there was no sarcasm in it. No mockery, no pity. It wasn't even about age or hierarchy. It was about arrival. I'd crossed some invisible line, from underestimated to undeniable. And the funny thing? I didn't feel taller, I didn't feel richer. I just felt seen. A few days later, I visited my parents for dinner. My mother had made her signature roast chicken, and my father was drinking his usual bourbon with one perfect ice cube. Halfway through the meal, Mom casually asked, "So, tell us about this app. Your sister said it's doing well." I smiled. It's been a journey. My dad raised an eyebrow. She said you're wealthy now? I blinked. Define wealthy, he chuckled. More than us. I didn't flinch. By a margin. They laughed. But for once, it wasn't condescending, it wasn't guarded, it was real. After dinner, my mom helped me clear plates. As she rinsed a glass, she asked, "Are you happy?" I turned to her, surprised by the question. "I think so," I said. "More than I've ever been." She dried her hands and nodded. "You always did things your own way. We just didn't know how to support it." "I know. I'm proud of you," she said, then softer. "And I hope your sister learns from you." "She's trying. She always looked up to you," she added. That made me stop. She had a funny way of showing it. "She's never been great at expressing that kind of thing. You've always been the one who builds things. She copies, but you create." I looked at her, then laughed. Well, if she calls me ma'am again, I might start charging consulting fees. But deep down I knew. I didn't need the title. I didn't need the money. I didn't even need the apology. I just needed the shift. To stop being the shadow. To stop asking for permission. To stop playing small because someone else couldn't see the size of my vision. That's what ma'am meant to me. It was the symbol that I had arrived, not in their eyes, but finally in my own. You grow up thinking that if the right people finally believe in you, it'll fix something. That if they clap loud enough, say I was wrong enough, offer support now, that the wound from back then will close. Neatly. Like a puzzle piece clicking into place. But the truth is, you don't need them to believe in you. Not once. The belief already lives inside you. That's what I learned the week I said no to the biggest check of my life. A venture capital firm reached out. Big name, sleek pitch. They'd seen our traction, our numbers, our media buzz. They offered $12 million for a significant stake and 2 board seats. $12 million. I sat with that number for 2 days. Wrote it down on sticky notes. Let it hang in the air of my apartment like smoke. Then I called Lena. She said what I already knew but needed to hear aloud. You didn't build this just to sell it. Not yet. I declined the offer. Politely. Firmly. And as I hit send on the email, I felt something unshakable settle in my chest. This was no longer about proving anything to anyone, especially not to Brielle. We still talked, by the way. We weren't best friends, not yet, but we were becoming honest. She sent updates on her business, screenshots, wins, failures, ideas that didn't land, one TikTok that surprisingly did. I cheered for her, edited her site copy, nudged her when she second-guessed. And one night, around 11:30 p.m., she sent me a text. "I cried today. Someone tipped me $150 and said they felt seen. I finally get what you built." That was the moment she saw me. Not as the sister who asked for $100 once. Not as the weird girl with the tech hobby. But as someone who had quietly started a fire and built a home from its ashes. I took a walk after reading that text. Late night, city quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty but earned. As I passed storefronts and sleepy intersections, I thought about how much of my life had been shaped by wanting to be seen. Not famous, not worshipped, just witnessed. For my effort, my curiosity, my resilience. And I realized somewhere along the line, I'd stopped needing it from them, because I'd learned to witness myself. I went home, opened my laptop, and wrote a post. 3 years ago, I asked my sister for $100. She laughed. Last week, she called me for advice on launching her business. I've made millions, but the best return I ever got was finally seeing my own worth, before anyone else had to. The post went viral, not because of the money, but because people recognized themselves in it. Hundreds of comments. My dad laughed when I said I wanted to be a writer. My friends rolled their eyes when I launched my Etsy shop. This is me. And my favorite, I believed in myself first, and that was enough. That's what this story became. Not about revenge, not about proving Brielle wrong, not even about the $3.7 million. It became a story about self-trust, about what happens when you stop asking the world to validate your spark and just decide to build the damn fire anyway. The last time Brielle and I met, it was at a coffee shop. Her startup had just crossed $12 in MRR. She looked exhausted, alive, real. She sipped her latte and smiled at me over the rim. "I used to think you were the quiet one," she said. "I was," I replied, "but not anymore." She nodded. "It's strange, all those years I thought I was ahead." I looked at her. "You were on a different path. There's room for both." She blinked, then smiled again. "Ma'am, you're way too gracious." We laughed, and just before we left she touched my arm. "Thank you," she said, "for not slamming the door." I shrugged. I didn't build this to keep anyone out. I built it because I was tired of being locked in. Somewhere I still have the original sticky note. It's faded now, edges curled, but the ink is stubborn. $100 today equals $3 million someday. Watch me. I used to think that note was a promise to the world. Now I know it was a promise to myself, and I kept it, every damn word. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been laughed at, overlooked, dismissed, I want you to know, you're not crazy for believing in yourself. You're just early. Drop a T if you're holding on to your spark. Share this with someone who's quietly building. And follow, because this isn't just my story, it's ours.